All right. We have Sadia and Orion.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Wonderful to see you guys again.
Yeah,
good
very
to
good to be
see you.
here.
Very excited.
This is very exciting to have both of you. You're both experts on romantic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out that way, I guess.
Yeah, self-proclaimed, but okay.
Yes, but I just find your insights to be so helpful and so needed in this world where we're all struggling to connect. And let's just get into it. Sadia, this is probably a question that you could start with. Tell me about hypergamy. Does hypergamy exist?
It definitely exists. I just think it's been hijacked with the wrong definition in the world of the internet.
But before you get into it, it's basically the premise that women are on the lookout for another guy when they're in a relationship already.
As an upgrade?
As an upgrade.
As an upgrade, yeah.
Exactly.
With the key thing.
They're going to monkey branch from one guy to the next, and like no one knew this was even going on, and it was like is it something that women do consciously or is it subconscious?
I think it really just stems with how many gaps she has in herself. The more she feels unfulfilled in herself, the more she will be a girl that's constantly dipping with different types of men. But the more high self-esteem and the more fulfilled she is, the more of those gaps that she has within herself that she's fulfilled herself, the less likely she is to do that. Because the key is with women who kind of monkey branch from one man to the other is they pick men that they don't truly admire to begin with. They pick men that just adore them, but they don't particularly admire. When they're in that position, they automatically feel like they can do better. The moment you are with a man that just totally adores you and you don't truly admire him, you think this must not be the best deal. Because if it was, I would be admiring you more. So they're constantly on the lookout for a man that they truly admire. And until they find that, they'll keep their eyes open. But if they find a man that they truly admire and they're truly attracted to, those two things, admiration and attraction, she's loyal to a fault. She'll become so loyal, more than she should be. She'll be waiting for him while he might be in jail. She'll be, sharing him with another woman, but staying at home for him. So hypergamy only exists when the man allows her to believe that she is out of his league. Then she'll keep her options open.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a good point to that. I have the balance of attraction metaphor, and you're talking about when the woman is in the adored position, she's being put on a pedestal, and the man is giving her all of that energy. She doesn't feel like she's with a catch, even though on paper the guy might be worth 8 figures and a doting husband and a fantastic father. And so women use their emotional signaling as sort of a proxy for, am I with the best possible mate for myself? I think on the internet there's also a bit of a misgiving about hypergamy in the sense that women are constantly looking out for even a slightly better option, and they'll jump ship the first time an opportunity presents itself. And I don't think that's the case, because there has to be some attrition between relationships. So it's like if you have a 30-year relationship, it's going to be very difficult to start over from scratch. Hey, I was born in Las Vegas, I got a sister, I'm into psychology. To start from zero, it takes a lot of work. So it's not going to be just a slightly better option at that point. It has to be either the woman is extremely dissatisfied, which increases the perceived benefit from jumping ship, or it has to be a supremely better option. Like, you might be happy with your job, you might not even think of leaving, but if your recruiter calls and says, we'll give you 10x what you're being paid, okay, that's something that you're probably going to consider. But if it's just like $5,000 more a year, I don't think you're going to be willing to.
I think guys are more afraid of like her friend who's the trainer that trains her at the gym, or some guy that came to the party that she knew, and things like that.
So then if hypergamy does exist, how do we explain the fact that they all cheat on their 6-figure man or 7-figure man for their, taekwondo instructor? How would you explain that?
Because, and I think this works for both men and women, that I think when people cheat, we often see them cheating down. Like James Sexton mentioned that the other woman is generally not as attractive as the wife. And sometimes the wife's lover is the pool boy or the trainer or something like that. It's like, what's going on? How does that fit into your idea? And I think people are trying to get all of their needs and desires met across multiple relationships. So if you're in a stable, secure, loving relationship, you don't need more security. You don't need more stability. You might need some excitement. You might need some passion. You might need some danger and uncertainty. And you're going to find that potentially with the insecurely attached guy with 3 children by 3 different mothers. By the same token, maybe you're a man and you are in a contentious, conflictual relationship with your wife, you might have an emotional affair with a woman who's just a safe haven. It might not even involve sex at that point. So people are trying to get their unmet needs met in their affair relationships.
Soft White Underbelly is about giving people a space to tell their stories, even when these stories challenge what we think we know. Ground News shows us different perspectives in the media, which is why Ground News is a perfect sponsor for my channel. In a world where algorithms censor much of the information we receive, some of the most important stories get missed from our news feeds. Ground News highlights local news from around the world, giving you an on-the-ground perspective that national coverage might miss. The app and website empowers you to form your own opinions by presenting you with every article published on any news story worldwide. My favorite part of the app is the data it gives you on each news source as you read it, such as where it leans on the political spectrum, a factuality rating indicating how subjective their printed reporting tends to be, and who funds it. I particularly like their blind spot feed, dedicated to showing you news stories that are underrepresented in the mainstream media. You can check this all out by scanning the QR code on screen or clicking the link below. It's easy to forget how much bias can shape the reality we live in. And in a world where our attention is constantly being fought over, my Vantage Plan easily helps me keep up with more important stories slipping through the cracks. So I encourage you to check them out at ground.news/SWU. Subscribe through my link to save 40% off their Vantage Plan. And by subscribing or even gifting it to someone you know, you're helping hold the media accountable and helping my channel directly. Thank you for watching.
Okay. I personally feel like the quickest way to prevent a woman from cheating on you is your selection. Really, sometimes some men are bums and they're terrible to women, and yet they manage to get so much loyalty out of the woman because they've chosen a woman who's just not that way inclined. A woman that's got a one-track mind, she's just very closed off all the alternatives as soon as she meets that man. And there's other women you can do everything for, but her mindset is always to have alternatives open. It's just how she is designed. So I think that the pre-selection is more important than the post, like what the relationship looks like post-selection. So I would always say it's what the woman is like, and similarly to man, what they're like, rather than what you offer them. And a lot of men, I think, well, I'm the best option she'll ever have. I'm far better looking than her ex. I've got far more money than her ex is. There's no guy taller than me that she hangs out with. But if she is either hyper-promiscuous or unable to commit kind of woman who goes from one to the other, it doesn't matter what you offer her. She'll find a route to cheat.
Selection is very important.
Yeah.
I think 90% of successful relationships is selection.
Yeah.
Is it more important? I mean, tell me the difference between being the adorer and the adoree. Like in all relationships, there's usually one person who really, really loves their partner, perhaps more than the other.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it like an example of that. I don't know if you know Selena Gomez. She's currently dating this guy, and I saw it go viral. And she used to be with Justin Bieber. And you can see she's with a man that truly adores her, worships her. But until a woman is attracted to you, your adoration is interpreted as neediness and desperation. The only thing that will turn a man's adoration into security is if she finds you attractive, and she's attracted to you as a man. If she doesn't find you attractive, she will utilize your adoration. Maybe she needs you financially, or to help her heal from an ex, or just help you with her mental any way, shape or form, but she won't truly be attracted to you. And you'll notice a heavy decline in the sexual intimacy on her end, despite your efforts to make her feel safe. It just won't be initiated from her. And that will happen quite early on in the relationship. And sometimes I'll meet these men that dating women who are 28 years old, 29 years old, and they're like, oh, she just doesn't have a sex drive. And I always say, with you. The key word is with you. She has an amazing sex drive. At 28, what woman doesn't have a sex drive? It's with you is the key point. And hyper adoring a woman who doesn't quite admire you is the quickest way to desexualize yourself.
Yeah.
What would you say, Orion?
Yeah, it's sort of like the part that women always leave out, is you ask women what they want. They say they want a kind man, they want a loyal man, they want a man to treat her like a queen, to adore her. But the part they leave out is they want all of those things from a man they're already attracted to.
Yeah.
And they've already decided to be attracted to that man without knowing yet whether he's kind or loyal or devoted.
Yeah.
So attraction isn't actually predicated on those things, it's predicated on other things. And so as a man, we need to say that part out loud to other men and say, you need to work on becoming an attractive man, and the other stuff can come later. Because if you prioritize the one ahead of the other, you're not going to get anywhere.
But what I do find is men are quite delusional about that. They're
Sure.
like, I think she's really into me, I can just tell, right? They want to believe a woman is far more attracted to him than she truly is. And they will ignore all the signs and take the tiny, tiny glimpses of hope that she's attracted to him. And I think that's a recipe for disaster for men when they misread a woman's signals of attraction.
Well, sure, if you're used to not eating at all, even crumbs taste delicious,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of men don't have good optionality with women.
Yeah.
And so they definitely misinterpret small signs of interest as love and desire and infatuation. In fact, we know that men are also more prone to misinterpret just general friendliness as sexual interest than women are. That's why every man has fallen in love with a barista at some point. She's just doing her job, dude.
Yeah, you did a really great short. I wish I could remember it. It was something about the man not when he's not attractive. Even her buying a birthday cake is super exciting. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, it's check-in. Well, I forget the title of that episode.
Something to do with attraction.
Listen to Yourself, I think is the name of that
Okay.
episode. And some guys just really have to sell themselves on the idea that a woman is interested in him. And I sometimes ask for examples, and the examples of her behavior that the men give are just so basic,
Yeah.
so minimal, like really the bare minimum any person should expect from a girlfriend or a partner. But maybe that's more than that man has ever received from a woman previously.
Yeah.
Now, I do think that women are kind of deluded too, though. So,
Yeah, I
come
do
on.
agree. I have to, and I didn't realize how bad it was until I started working with men who are a little bit, maybe they're like 5'8", but a 5'1" woman will say, "No, that's way too short. That's way too short for me." And I'm just thinking, but 7 inches is a huge gap in your height. So, and these women, as they get older and everything changes, they still have the same expectations they had at 25. So a woman that will hit 35 will still say, "I want a man with no kids," but at 35, you should want a man with kids, just in case you can't give them to him. It should save you a lot of that rigmarole, just in case. You know, you should adapt your expectations as you age. Or you can adapt and say, maybe I need to go somebody, maybe he's just 5 or 6 inches taller. It doesn't have to be a whole couple of feet taller than me. There's no adaptation with their type as they age. And if anything, they get fussier. And that really hinders their ability to settle down.
Well, I think they get fussier because they're using the same metric on themselves that they use to judge men. They think, well, here at 40, I'm making $500,000 a year,
Yeah.
and I'm a manager, and I've had all of these experiences, and I have a master's degree. And those are potentially signs of success in education and conscientiousness that they're looking for in men, but men don't use those criteria on women.
No.
So it's a failure of perspective taking on women's part.
Yeah, and I can say this as a woman in her 30s, I would still say, even if I might look better on paper than a woman in her 20s, they would still choose a woman in her 20s if they could. It's just a fact of life. It's nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. And I say this as quite an educated, and I've got a lot going for me. I still know a relatively not as smart, maybe not even as attractive 28-year-old would still do better. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just that's how life progresses. But I think the uncomfortable truth about that keeps women single for a lot longer than they should be.
What do you mean?
As in, they think that they have more to offer, so they should be more desirable.
Their desirability peaks out in
Because
their
they're more
20s,
intelligent, they're calmer than a 25-year-old, they're more intelligent than a 25-year-old, they might be, more educated than a 25-year-old, but that doesn't actually play out in the real world, unfortunately. And I say this as an older woman, it's not the end of the world if it does reduce your options, but you have to adapt your standards as you age.
Is it better to be a woman today than it was?
An
30?
attractive woman, yes.
An attractive
An
woman.
attractive, promiscuous woman, there's never been a better time to be alive. I see these 19-year-old girls on OnlyFans making millions, and there's no way a 19-year-old man can ever do that. So I think being an attractive woman in this day and age has never been a better time. All you have to do is post a picture of you, and you'll be flown out, you'll be taken to places. Men will pay anything to have access to you like this, and you can manipulate any man you want, any man. And a lot of men have this idea that, but there's so many girls. Yeah, there's so many girls, but not all girls are willing to sell their soul to do what you want them to do. So there's only a limited women that can do that, and those limited women have a complete monopoly over the market when it comes to men.
Yeah, I think that women have always sort of wanted to be around $1 million, and for the first time in human history, it might be easier for the average woman to get $1 from 1 million men than $1 million from one man. But do you think it's just easier for attractive promiscuous women? You think non-promiscuous women are having a hard time?
They don't stand a chance, because men will attach to great sex, not great women. Period. And at the moment you are a great woman with the inability to please a man sexually, you do not stand a chance. Those days where they used to appreciate the fact that she's a great cook, she's great with my mum, she would be a really caring stepmom, are replaced with she knows how to give me a great blowjob, she knows what to wear, she knows what in bed, and she knows how to do her nails the way I like it. Every quality that made a good woman is now being replaced with every quality that makes a great sexual experience. And so promiscuity is far more important than attraction than ever before.
I think it's still probably a good time to be alive if you're an attractive woman and
without promiscuity.
Yeah. Because there's only so many attractive women, and promiscuous attractive women are even a smaller subset than that. And most men are not getting laid by super attractive promiscuous women.
Yeah, but do you think that they would choose a promiscuous woman over an attractive woman? If they had a choice, if you had a choice between great sex, but she's not your favorite, or beautiful, but you don't like the sex with her, what do you think men on the whole would select?
It depends. Like, the ego boost that comes from the attractive woman is very seductive for some men. I do think that that's a trap.
But I think there's a lot of guys that would just take a piece of ass when they can get it.
And they'd hurt the great, beautiful, attractive woman to
No,
access.
I mean, there is no more valuable commodity in our culture than an attractive female.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of guys just like to get laid.
Well, I've also found that a lot of attractive women aren't necessarily great at sex. Like, we believe that the hotter the woman is, the hotter she's going to be in bed, the better she's going to be in bed. That's not necessarily true at all. And in fact, that's one way that less attractive women can potentially outcompete.
Do you think
the
men are more
attractive
loyal
women.
to beautiful women or sexually good women?
Depends on the loyalty.
I would say they're always loyal to whoever gives them the best sex.
I don't know. I think it's the attractiveness, because I think that a lot of men, I know guys who are still holding a candle for a woman with borderline personality disorder who treated him very badly, cheated on him, left him in the lurch, but she was the hottest woman that...
But was she the hottest or was she the best sex?
I think it was the hottest.
I would imagine it's the best sex, because
so?
those crazy women do give the best sex. They tend to, because they tend to have a short-term mating strategy, similar to men, because they know that they can't sustain long-term relationships. They give it their all, and that extends to the bedroom. So they almost give it like they're never going to see this guy again.
Yeah.
And whereas women that have a long-term mating strategy, that think they're going to be with you forever, there'll be days where they go into bed with a face mask on and, they put their socks on. The woman that thinks this is only short-term will bring it every single chance she gets.
I have told women in consultations that you don't have to be a borderline to fuck like a borderline. And it might be a really good strategy for some borderline women to get together and teach classes to other women about what to do in the bedroom. They would be unstoppable.
So there seems to be a strong change in women's behavior. There seems to be much more entitlement in younger women now. Where does that come from?
I would blame a lot of that on social media. We have endless amount of sugar babies, escorts, and gold diggers giving endless advice. And the reason being is because they showcase what they've acquired from a man rather than the relationship itself. So they say, I got this Chanel bag, I'm going here, but they will never actually show what the actual relationship looks like. And when that becomes your role model as a young girl, you have the option of going through heartache and attaching to a man in a regular way and him disappointing you, which is what usually the experience is when you're not materialistic. Or you go down the materialistic route where you just turn off your emotions, see men as a job and fall in love with what they offer you rather than who they are. And if it doesn't work out, no problem, you've got another one. And you keep yourself kind of pain-free in that way. So I think social media doesn't help in that way, and the entitlement is just growing and growing to the point where even somebody like me, I find that if you're a woman and you don't give advice from the perspective of a gold digger or an escort, you'll get endless women saying, pick me, pick me, pick me, you're a pick me. But if I was here saying, this is how you take money from a man, this is how you steal money, this is how you cheat on him, I would be revered by women. I would literally have millions of followers and they would repost me all day, every day. So the fact that the female audience is hungry for that sugar baby escort woman teaching you how to get men shows what's happened to society and to women in general.
I think that's always been the case, though. I might be a little bit more cynical. Like, you can go on Seeking Arrangements, right, the sugaring site, and there it runs the spectrum. There are women there who are just straight up prostitutes and they're selling sex for money. But there's also, on the other side, women who say, I just want a traditional relationship. I want to be taken care of. I'll clean, I'll cook, and I'll be your wife. So I think that traditional housewifery is on the same sugaring spectrum as prostitution. It's just a little bit more classy.
Right.
But I still think that these tactics about like how to get money from a man, how to get his attention, how to take him for all he's worth, like grandmothers were teaching their grandchildren that about how to get the right guy to marry them for generations.
But I think the key ingredient that separates just a woman who wants a traditional household and a woman that is sugaring or like gold digging is attraction. The women that genuinely want a good relationship will put attraction first, then worry about what he offers her and what he's going to do for her. But the attraction has to come from her end first. Sugaring means, what does he do for me first and foremost? How much does he obsess over me? And I don't even care if I'm attracted to him. So she'll have an ex that might be an Indian man, a Chinese man, a crypto guy. There'll be a range of exes, and there's no consistency in what they look like, only in their finances. And that's when you know she's sugaring, because there's no actual type of what she goes for. Whereas women that want a traditional household don't compromise on attraction. They just still want to love the guy, but the guy should do a lot for her. That's I would say the key difference.
Yeah, I think that's just the way that people are. It's like there's plenty of folks who do jobs for companies and they don't believe in the mission. They don't believe in the real purpose of the service or the good. They're doing it for money.
That's true.
It's like we enter into relationships of all kinds in order to derive benefit. And I do think that there is this way that we can use love, or you're actually saying attraction, which I think is probably more accurate, to kind of cover over that, because if we remove that, we see each other and ourselves in a really stark light where our needs and desires are laid bare, and that's not actually very virtuous, it's not very ennobling, it's not very attractive. And so we, as a culture and as individuals, we like to cover that over with a patina of romance and love and attraction and feelings. But I think if the fundamental value exchange isn't present, then in the vast majority of cases, those romantic covers that we use to obscure that aren't sufficient to keep the relationship alive.
So we need a bit of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. But I just think the order is different. So genuine love, from a woman's perspective, I always tell men, if a woman is not going in this order, she doesn't love you. She has to be attracted to you first. She has to get a bit obsessed with you after, a bit anxious, worried, where's this going? There has to be some anxiety. If it stops there and there's no, she's just anxious and attracted, it will turn toxic. But if you can offer her reassurance and security after that, it will turn into love. It will genuinely turn into love and commitment. Yeah, and then it will turn there. But if she doesn't have the attraction and she doesn't have the obsession, but you just try and give her stuff, she'll never get those two things. And those two things are really, really important ingredients as precursors for falling in like love, or at least falling in loyalty. And I actually focus more on whether a woman is loyal to you rather than when she's in love with you. And I think a lot of people with low self-esteem, they will focus on, but I know he loves me, but I know she loves me. I know she treats me badly, I know she cheats, but I know deep down she loves me. And I said, loyalty is far more important than love when it comes to a woman. Forget whether she loves you. Who cares if she loves you or not? Is she loyal to you? Is she treating you well? Treatment is far more important than this belief system that I know she loves me. And people with low self-esteem, they want to believe this person loves them as a compensation strategy to the fact that they don't love themselves. But when you truly love yourself, you'll be like, I don't care if you love me or not. How do you treat me is more important. And they don't focus on the treatment.
Absolutely. Like focusing too much on the emotion is like paying attention to money locked in a safe at the bottom of an ocean. It's like it might be very valuable, but it's inaccessible. Maybe you love me, maybe you don't. I have to take your word for it, but I certainly don't feel it from the way that you're treating me.
Right. Yeah. And you notice that with your male clients as well, that they focus on the fact that she might.
They can do that. But I think the real issue with bad treatment in a relationship is a man, for whatever reason, has already decided this is the one I want. This is the one I want to go the distance with. This is the one I want to marry and start a family with.
Yeah.
And they've emotionally committed and made a decision prior to sufficiently vetting the woman. And now they're kind of like behind the eight ball, and they're realizing less than flattering traits, incompatibilities, and difficulties, and they're running defense. They're trying to rationalize to themselves, make excuses for the behavior, because they're trying to preserve the dream that they've already decided to emotionally invest in, that they've projected onto that particular woman.
And do you think that's most men, or do you think that's more an American man thing? Do you find that across the board, or do you find that mostly with American men?
I don't think it's necessarily American men, but I do think it's a more romantic delusion.
Yeah, which I think is an American concept. We
know that romance comes from France initially, so it's a continental thing.
Well, maybe a Western thing.
Maybe
it's a Western thing. And me being an Eastern woman, these things are unheard of, where a man would just commit to a woman and be loyal to her and have to prove how much he loves her and will understand her trauma and dissect all her daddy issues just to show her how much he loves. This is a foreign concept to
Really?
me. Yeah, it's unheard of. And then I go as far as to say I've never met a Western or American man that I don't believe who has ever not been cheated on. I really feel like universally they get cheated on a lot and they stay loyal to a woman that is disloyal to them. Now you get really narcissistic men who don't experience that, but the genuine good guy in America tends to always get cheated on. This is one of the revelations I had from my work. I always believed before I started this work that women only cheat on toxic men, treat them terribly, emotionally deprive them, and then she's got no choice but to be with another man, like kind of damsel in distress. Working with American men has taught me that women are actually very loyal to toxicity. They're far more disloyal to constant reassurance, dedication, and romance from a man. And when I was trying to figure out what I think it really boils down to,
what do you think it is?
I think it boils down to a lack of masculinity. They would rather be with a toxic man who's narcissistic but has more masculinity than a loving, kind, reassuring man that lacks that masculinity. And how women define masculinity is protectiveness, essentially, provision and procreation. But I think the key thing with men in America is they're happy to provide. They have no problems with providing. They actually don't have a terrible habit of not providing. They're happy to procreate, but they find protectiveness as a form of oppression. They think if they say to their women, hey, look, I don't want you talking to your ex, or I don't want you wearing that, or I don't think you should be posting that, they think that's them being toxic. So they eliminate the protectiveness completely from their vocabulary. And as a result, they either lack their masculine dominance or they just attract women who don't want that. And those are the women who tend to be more freedom seeking and do what they want. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, I think certainly the toxic man should probably be more masculine than the nice guy. It would be hard to be toxic and more effeminate and get that kind of reaction out of women. I think that the reason why women tend to fall in love with toxic men has to do with the fundamental feminine romantic fantasy, which I think is Beauty and the Beast, where it's like most people misinterpret that fairy tale and they think that Belle, the girl, can see like past the beastly exterior and she loves him despite being an animal. No. She loves him because he's an animal. And this gives her an opportunity to like get to conquer on some level. Conquering the beast is the female equivalent of just like sexual conquest in men. And so there's this sort of emotional challenge that is very attractive to a lot of women. And they think, I can fix him through my patience, through my love, through my loyalty. I can show him that not all women are like this and that there's more to life. And at the end, the fantasy, of course, is he transforms into the prince, the love worked, and they can live happily ever after. Of course, if Belle fell in love with the beast, what the fuck is she going to do with the gentleman? Like, how long is that attraction going to last, right?
Women seem to want a bad boy who's good to them, and men seem to want a good girl who's only bad with them.
Yeah, exactly that. But I think what it is that women, it's not necessarily that they need something bad, but they need something fearless. They just need a fearlessness. And what's happened with nice guys is they are, one of the traits I see across the board, particularly with men and Western men in particular, they're terrified of women. They are absolutely terrified, and rightly so, I understand, because the movement has made it that you...
They're not that scary.
I think, yeah, but I maybe I deal with the subsect of men that have this kind of...
You're spending too much time in Dubai.
Yeah, I know. They're so terrified to tell their woman that they need more sex. They'll go years without having sex with their wife. They're just scared to say it.
Yeah,
they're terrified to tell their woman that she's gained a bit of weight. They're terrified to tell their woman that he might have to, still pay his ex-wife alimony.
That'll fly in Dubai?
I think what it is, they don't have a fear of their women as much. Not so much Dubai because it's so filled with expats, but I think in Eastern culture in general, they don't fear their women as much. They genuinely don't fear their women as much. If anything, the women fear them a little bit. Whereas in Western culture, they submit and fear their women a lot more. And what Western women don't realize is that when they can incite fear in their man, they lose respect for him. I think the part of them likes that because you'll see these TikToks where the girls are like, oh, you need a man that's like a golden retriever, you be the black cat, and he should love you so much more. The moment they get that in that man, part of him for being that golden retriever is that fear of losing her, that fear of her. It's unattractive. And she slowly starts to lose respect. Now, this is not all women. Some women really appreciate that. But majority of the women, they find that emasculating.
And I do think that it's easier for men not to fear having those conversations with women when they don't have a scarcity mentality, when they have consistent success with women, and they might have some optionality even simultaneous with that relationship. It's very easy to be able to tell the truth and to speak directly about your needs and wants and to be outcome independent when you know that you can be okay either way.
Yeah.
But for so many men, this woman might be the only woman who showed him interest in years. And it took him how many years of loneliness and struggle in order to get this. So he's just like running, trying to prevent loss more than anything else.
Do you think there's a way of men achieving that mentality without having their options open with other women and stuff? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, but it's tough. Like, I think to have that kind of confidence without actually exercising optionality, the guy has to be famous.
Right, okay, so he has to have something to him?
He needs to be, because it's only through fame that a man approaches being a beautiful woman, in the sense that even if the famous man is perfectly loyal to his partner, he knows that there's millions of women who are watching him who would be receptive to messaging. He could spin something up very quickly, even if he doesn't have anything actually warmed up. Just like a woman, she always has orbiters around her, even if she's not actively cultivating that kind of attention. Even if she's perfectly loyal, she can't help it. She attracts that kind of attention, and if things go sideways, it won't be long before she has an alternative that suits her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it does stem from having options, but I think it should stem, I think as a man, you should grow up with a mentality and be raised with a mentality that women actually need confrontation. It's not something you should be avoiding. And I find that men that don't grow up with their fathers and don't grow up with a lot of men around them believe that women should be babysat. Their emotions should be babysat. You should tiptoe around them, make them feel safe all the time, and they agree with them all the time. When really, when you grow up with both mom and dad, you realize that part of the success of their relationship is they like some back and forth. They need some confrontation from their husband. If they completely run all over him, the relationship won't work, and you won't be modeled masculinity. So I think that it extends a little bit earlier. If you just simply understand that the things that your mum is teaching you is not what women find attractive. Your mum might want you to be obedient. Your mum might want you to be placid. Your mum might want you to agree with her in everything she says. But your wife wants confrontation. She wants to see your own identity. She wants to know your own opinions. Only then she can actually attach to something rather than a shadow of her own opinions. And because so many men are now being raised without their fathers, and so many men have a disdain towards their fathers, they are developing a mindset of becoming an obedient son and applying that into relationships, and it's just simply unattractive.
What are your thoughts on the feminization of men?
It's really worrying, particularly with the low testosterone. It's really, really worrying because now women are left with the options of, masculine men, but they're almost toxic and narcissistic, or with a feminized man. And any woman will choose narcissist over feminized, always. So you're left with women who are quite scarred because that's their optional, their two options. So the feminization of men, I don't even think they realize they're so feminized. I think they think they're doing the right things. So they will learn, one of the things that a lot of men I know, they will meet a woman who's treating them badly, and they say, I know it's because of her trauma, she's an avoidant attachment, she was raised this, and they want to explain emotionally about what she's going through and try and be there for her emotionally. Women don't want you to understand them. They want to know what you're going to do about it. Yes, okay, I've traumatized. I, cheated on you. Fine, you understand my trauma came from my childhood because I was deprived, blah, blah, blah. Great. What are you going to do about it? Now, just over-understanding her is feminization. It's not actually attractive. We want to know what you're going to do about it. We want decision makers, not therapists. No offense, we are therapists, so I'm not saying it, but in your relationship, we don't want that. That's what our sisters are for. That's what our parents are for. You are there to say, I get that you've got trauma. I know that you've got daddy issues. Not my problem. You're going to act like this? Bye. That's what we're more attracted to than somebody who sits down and does a love language quiz with you. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I made an episode about that called The Trap of Understanding. Not everyone should be in a relationship. So even if we take that on good faith at face value, let's say she does have some trauma, she does have some attachment issues that she needs to work through, that doesn't necessarily mean that you as the man have to fall on your sword and put up with bad behavior. It's like she might have an injury, just like in sports, she's going to do some PT on the side. We're going to keep her off the field, and hopefully in 6 and 8 months, we can get her back in the game. But no one has a right to play despite their injuries. That's just going to hurt more people that way.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, and same for men. Some women will say, I know he's been traumatized and that's why he keeps, cheating on me and he keeps doing this and he's got this drug addiction, but I know it's because of his trauma. So what are you going to do about it? People only respect your decisions, not your thoughts. So what are you going to do about it? It's actually telling them what they want to hear or believing what they tell you. If you work with a lot of women and believe them, automatically you're going to think this is the reason. But the key is, and I say this with men and women, as a therapist, you should treat every client that comes to you as a liar. They're lying the whole thing. And your job as a good therapist is to spot that lie, because they're lying to themselves. That's how they got here. And if you as a therapist, somebody comes in and says, my ex is a narcissist, I'll say, well, you chose them. Let's talk about you. Let's see what you're doing wrong. Or they'll say to me, I just don't have a sex drive for my wife. I don't desire her. I'm like, but tell me what's going on behind the scenes. Are you watching too much porn? Are you cheating on her? I don't believe what you're telling me right now. The key is to understand people lie to themselves. So when they go to therapy, when they go to personal training, when they go to doctors, they'll lie to you. And as a good therapist, you should be able to spot that. The coaches and the people that go wrong are the ones that believe the feedback that they're getting from their clients and using that to coach. When really we need to dig a bit deeper and realize that sometimes what they're saying and what they're doing are not aligned.
Yeah, I take everything that someone tells me with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
I don't maybe come out and say everything they're saying is a lie. I'm expecting that. I'm just sort of like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We'll see. Because I found that if you come right out of the gate and say, I don't believe you, you're full of shit, you get a lot of resistance, they get offended. And,
they don't come back
so.
as much.
But I certainly just I hold it not as the pure unvarnished truth and look for ways to kind of get in to show themselves to themselves in a more productive manner.
You guys both see clients on your own, right?
Sounds like
Yeah.
It's part of both of your lives. What are the cases you see a lot of in your practice?
Mine is the growing trend of men paying for sex. That is kind of the growing trend of the porn addiction, which then escalates into paying for sex. And then I'll say that again. It starts with a porn addiction, which then turns into erectile dysfunction. That erectile dysfunction makes them feel uncomfortable about having sex with real women that are not paid for their time because they feel like they might be judged or they feel like she won't appreciate it. So through that fear of rejection, they then turn to escorts. And escorts don't judge you when you can't get it up. They don't judge you when you can't ejaculate. They don't judge the size of it, but you are paying for their lack of judgment, but you're also paying for your ability to violate because you're witnessing that too much in porn, and that's what you see as associated with sex. So I found, maybe because of the content I produce, that tends to be the growing trend in the men that I work with. And this is when I say to you, I believe they're lying. They'll come to me and say, I just use escorts because it's quick and easy. And I'm like, but now you're madly in love. And then the line that they always say is, I'm paying her to leave. I'm like, yeah, but you're now on a call because you've just got engaged to an escort. So when did you pay her to leave? Yeah, so they are lying to themselves, because the dream of every man that pays for sex is for one day for her to say, this one's on me, you don't have to pay a penny. If you were truly paying for her to leave, that wouldn't feel so good when she makes it free. So you're actually paying for an approval of a woman that you couldn't access in the real world. And the moment they're more honest with themselves about that, the more we can actually work on it and change the system. But this is an area that they just refuse to be honest about.
That's a very specific problem, Sadia.
Yes, it is.
I've worked with some guys on porn addiction
Yeah.
and the subsequent ED that can result, but it's usually a guy every month or two has fallen in love with an escort. It's actually a fairly common problem. I made some episodes about that. But I think mostly the guys I talk to are having trouble finding a woman that they want to have a long-term relationship with, or more commonly now, older guys who are having marital difficulties and wanting to see if they could potentially turn things around.
I
in their
personally
relationships.
struggle to know how to help people who just can't get their foot in the door with women, because sometimes I meet these guys are actually great. They've got a good job. There's nothing wrong with them on paper. There's actually really good guys. It's just that they just for some reason can't get their foot in the door with a lot of women. So I struggle to help those men, if I'm being totally honest. I don't know. What do you usually tell these men?
Well, I tell them the part that women always leave out. So there has to be some sort of attraction problem, and I try to get them to understand that it might be a marketing issue. It's like, let's assume that you're actually a fantastic product. You're a great guy, and any woman would be lucky to have you. Probably not true, but we can start with that premise. It's like, but people aren't buying. Why? Is it an awareness issue? Do people not know that your product exists? Like, is it a branding? Are you communicating with your style, with your presence, with your tone? Like, kind of the lifestyle and the relationship that you're potentially offering. Like, these are behaviors. These are ways of presenting yourself to the world. And it's not a personal thing. We can tweak some of those things as long as you're not identified with them. And we'll keep playing with the knobs until we see some more interest and success from the opposite sex. It's often also...
So that's your usual clientele, like the guy that struggles to get...
That and older guys who are in difficult and unsatisfying relationships.
Orion, most of your clients are male?
Yeah, I'd say about 80% of my clients are male.
75, yeah, not far off. Yeah,
Mostly
75.
male?
Mostly male.
Really?
Yeah.
Are men more... It seems to me like you look at all the things that are online, men seem to be working very, very hard. They have for many centuries. Orion and I talked about this yesterday at lunch, I think, about how men seem to be really focused on trying to understand women and how to get closer to women and get women into their lives. Women don't seem to understand men at all.
Well, the thing that I always say to a married man that comes to me on the phone, I say, your woman's cheating on you. And I know that's a blanket statement, but the moment you are more invested in therapy, the moment you're more invested in saving the marriage than the woman is, something's going on that you're not aware of. And I know that sounds like a really big generalization.
Do you think it's always an affair, though?
Yeah.
Always?
Because
Okay.
especially when they come to me. If it was a different therapist, I can understand. But women that hate my content, if your man is going to a woman that's online, most women would be like, yeah, actually, you know what, let's get this, like, I kind of want to see what, there's a curiosity. And women in general are open to therapy. So when she avoids the session, particularly with me, I'm like, I'm sorry, she's definitely cheating on you or using you for money, one or the other. And why I say this is because when women have a genuine interest in saving their marriage, they're calling up every therapist they know. They're calling up everyone, their pastor. They're really trying. They come on the call and they've got tears in their eyes. They really want to make it work. When the man is on the call and he's like, I tried to convince her she doesn't want to be on therapy, or she came to 1 or 2 sessions and then she stopped. And I said, the reason why she stopped is because she knows she's going to go to that therapy session and lie. There's something she's hiding. She doesn't want the therapist to figure out, and you're not going to figure out. So she sees the whole process as a waste of money. But if she was genuine, she would want to be in that session. So when people avoid the therapy session or say it's a complete waste of money, particularly when the woman does it, it's because it's a waste of money because she knows there's something she's going on behind the back of everybody in that session that makes the therapy session a waste of time, because there's nothing that she can discuss that's honest in that session. And I know that sounds really negative, but that has been, and every time I say this to a man, every time I'm like, I think she's cheating on you. That's why she's not, this doesn't make sense. Why would you be here and she's not here? And why would she avoid it? Or why would she bring up such old things? Like, how is this relevant? And he's like, no, she would never. That's their mantra. No, she would never. They come back to me within 3 months. I give it 3 months. And I plant the seed, but they come back to me in 3 months and they said, do you remember me? You said that my wife was cheating. I'm like, did you find out? They're like, yeah, she was. Because I can tell by that dynamic in itself that she's doing up to something. Is that terrible? Do you ever find that or no?
Well, I don't do couples. I just do individuals.
Got it. Yeah.
I find it's hard enough to tell the truth to one person in a way that he or she can hear, and it's almost impossible to do that to two people at the same time.
I'm such a bitch. You're such a nicer person than I am in my sessions.
It's about effectiveness. I just can't be as effective with two people. And also, in traditional couples therapy, the relationship is the client, not the individuals involved. And I think that's like seeing a doctor who's going to try to keep you alive no matter what the quality of life he could offer you as a consequence of his treatment, which is not a doctor I would prefer to visit. Like, sometimes the best thing for that relationship is to pull that person aside. It's like, she's never going to fucking change. This is just who she is, and you're not accepting that. You got to get it through your dumb fucking head. Or he is completely... He doesn't love you. He disrespects you. That's never going to change. You can't cook and be subservient enough. It's like, but you don't do that in couples therapy, even though it might save everybody a lot of time, energy, and money. Because the relationship is the client, not the individuals. So I like working with people, with individuals.
Is loyalty different for men than for women?
What would you say?
Well, what do you mean by loyalty?
I think so.
Do you mean sexual exclusivity, or do you mean emotional fidelity?
All of that.
I would say, look, I think that loyalty for men can be a grey area. They can believe that they're super loyal to you and step out or something like that, or watch pornography or that. They still believe that they're loyal to you because they love you more than anyone else, and they believe that, and they want to spend the rest of their life with you.
I've heard many men say that. I love my wife and I fuck my mistress.
And they don't have any intention to leave their wife. And if you speak to any mistress, she will confirm this. She'll say to me, I was with him for 3-4 years. I begged him to leave his wife. He won't leave his wife. Then when when I told his wife he's hysterical, he's trying to save his marriage, I can't believe it, I thought he loved me. Men are incredibly loyal to the marriage itself, even if their behavior is not. Emotionally, whatever it is, they want to make it work. And it might be because of the family, it might be kids, whatever it is, but they want to stick at it. Whereas for women, the moment she shows interest in another man, her love for you just goes. It just literally goes. The moment she's disloyal, she will continue to be disloyal. It's a one-way street for women. And one of the things I always say that gets me in a lot of trouble is if a woman's cheated on you and you accept it, you are just her free accommodation until she finds someone she wants to live with. Because there is no way we can genuinely, two things, we can't genuinely love you and be attracted to you and sleep with other men if she's healthy. And secondly, what's worse than that, even if, let's say, she can cheat on you and still love you, she cannot respect you when you forgive her. And the respect is more important. There's nothing that usually pushes a man further away than when a woman is unfaithful biologically. So when you show that you accept that behavior, she can't respect you, because we like alpha, and alpha men would say, you had your chance, I wish you the absolute best, off you go. But men don't do that.
That's borne out by the research. Like, there doesn't seem to be any statistically significant difference in relationship satisfaction in men between men who cheat and men who don't.
Yeah, isn't that
there's
crazy?
an enormous relationship satisfaction differential between women who cheat and women who don't. So men cheat because they can on some level, because there's an attractive enough sexual opportunity that they want to take advantage of, maybe for novelty, maybe just because it's sex, who knows. Women cheat because they're emotionally dissatisfied. And the dissatisfaction precedes the attraction, the looking outward, and the acting on that. I do think that there is differences. I think that men care a lot more about sexual fidelity, and women seem to care more about emotional fidelity.
I feel like maybe it's the clients that I work with, but men just fool themselves. They will just say to themselves, I don't think she actually slept with him, or I know she was talking to him, but I don't think anything happened, or I know she went to the hotel with him, but I don't think anything happened. They find a way to lie to themselves long enough to believe she was sexually faithful to them. They will have a woman that hasn't touched them in 2 years, figured out that she was talking to an ex, and say, I don't think anything happened. It's that level of delusion that makes them so unattractive and makes them so unappealing to a woman that they can't get loyalty out of her again. But I do always say, men, there's two types of men. There are some men that are so loyal to their wife. It doesn't matter, ups and downs, like whether she gains weight, loses weight, treats him well, treats him badly, they're loyal to their wife. There's other men that are just loyal to the woman they fell in love with. If she stays the same, if she gives him the same sexual pleasure, say looks the same, she acts the same, he'll be loyal to her. The moment she deviates, he's disloyal. Other men are just loyal regardless, because they are just loyal to the woman. So you have to decide or realize which one your man is.
Well, I think in general it's a good idea for both men and women to continue to be and do the things that was attractive enough to the other person to initiate the relationship to begin with.
I
And
agree.
you sabotage the foundation of the relationship by deviating from those things too significantly. I think that's good for both men and women.
But in your experience with women, can they maintain the level of sexual intimacy that they began the relationship with, or do they tend to drop? Is that universal? Because sometimes I'll meet men that leave their wives because there was no intimacy. Meet a younger, hotter girl, and after a year or two, there's no intimacy again. So I'm just almost like, is this just something that they have to accept, that the intimacy decreases at any stage with a woman?
Well, I do think that we very rarely see frequency of sex go up as a function of time. So I do think that there's probably a natural decline. The question is, like, how steep of a drop off over what timeline? And I do think that it's happening way too fast.
Yeah, I do
like,
think
it
that.
shouldn't fade away after 2 or 3 or 5 years. And I think there are reasons for that. I don't think it's committing. I don't think it's even marriage. I don't think it's children. I think it's cohabitation more than anything else.
Just living together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think we've prioritized, Esther Perel makes this argument basically in Mating in Captivity, that in all of our Western relationship templates, we've prioritized safety and security over passion, sex, and
Novelty,
enthusiasm, right? So everything that's good for safety and security is kind of bad for passion and sex, and vice versa. So we've just choked out the passion and the desire in our unrelenting prioritization of safety and security. And I think that one thing that makes sex more likely to happen is space. Space is to sex what oxygen is to fire. Like, you need it. It's a combustible element. And when people are living together, they have constant low-grade interactions. You can walk into a room and not even acknowledge the other person. over a few months, over a few years, you can treat the other person just like furniture.
Yeah.
They're sitting there. This is exacerbated by work from home, exacerbated by cell phones. You're in constant communication with each other throughout your days. The other person is a completely known entity, and something that is completely known is of no interest to me whatsoever. Like, why do I need to interact with you? What could you potentially tell me that I don't already know about you? I've heard all your fucking stories.
We've had this
I know what you
conversation
had for
1,000
breakfast
times.
today. You sent me the cute memes that you saw at work today. It's like, what do I need you for
But
right
then,
now?
with space, how do we prevent space from leading to infidelity? Because sometimes what I find with my clients that travel a lot is one of the repercussions of traveling a lot is that they might, start having affairs when they're away and stuff like that. So how do we as women balance out space to create desire without space that creates infidelity?
I do think it's a risk that you run, but there's also a risk to not creating space. That's what I'm saying. And I don't think we collectively acknowledge the risk of prioritizing security over all things. So I do think that there's probably a balance here.
Yeah.
Sadia, I've heard you say that the type of woman a man can get to be loyal to him indicates the level, the quality of man that he is. I found that very interesting.
Well, I think...
I don't know if I understand that. What do you mean?
Well, I think what I'm trying to say in there is that the respect of a man lies entirely on the highest level of woman he can get to submit and be loyal to him. So the higher the quality of woman that he can get to be loyal and submissive to him, the higher quality the man is. The lower the quality of women that he can get to submit and be loyal to him, the lower the quality of the man. And one thing I find a bit interesting with the red pill kind of alpha men, and I see this even with like the Andrew Tates of the world that preach a lot about how important a woman's chastity is and how important it is that a woman be loyal and dedicated. But then the girlfriends are completely nude online. They're thongs, they're like clearly like sugar babies, escort that. So it just reduces the quality of the message immediately. Whereas if that same man had a very high value, very very sought after woman that every guy would love to see naked, but they could never in a million years, that man automatically becomes more valuable. So the level of woman that you can get to submit to you, it makes you more seen as more desirable as a man. And that woman, if she has hyper promiscuous or really, really financially dependent on you, it decreases the value of the man because we don't know what the genuineness of that relationship is. But if you take a woman who's got a lot going for her, has a pick of men, incredibly desirable, not just emotionally, not just like as a valuable woman, but even sexually on both ends, and then she picks that man is automatically, can walk into a room and men will admire him. So the quality of the woman that can be submissive and loyal to you determines the quality of the man. And you can never, ever be a high-value man if you pick a woman that you would be devastated that your daughter turns out like. Whereas if you're like, this is the woman that I'm with, and my daughter turns out exactly like her, I would be so proud, and people would be so proud, then you're genuinely of a high ranking, in my opinion. What would you say?
Yeah, I talk about that in the book. It's for better or for worse, based on how men and women judge each other. It doesn't take long to kind of figure out how attractive and desirable a woman is, especially from a man's point of view. It's so much having to do with her face and her beauty and her figure, et cetera, et cetera. For better or for worse, men can be ciphers. Like a great neurosurgeon who is a kind man and a family-oriented person who makes 7 figures a year could be just dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt at a local bar. You would never know that's who he is. And so one way that we assess a man's ranking and the amount of respect we accord to that is the level of attractiveness of his committed partner. Because we can assume if she's very beautiful that she has hundreds, if not thousands of men that she could potentially commit and relate to, but she chose that guy.
Yeah.
So there must be more to that guy than meets the eye. And so we use the women as a proxy for the man's merit.
I agree. And I think if you've got low self-esteem, you'll just look at just her sexiness. And you'll think, oh my God, he's so lucky. He got that really, really sexy woman.
They will think that.
They will think that. So it doesn't matter if she is an OnlyFans model. It won't matter if she's, an escort. As long as she's sexy, they're like, oh my God, he must be so valuable. And he'll have a plethora of followers, and that is totally fine. But if you've got high self-esteem, you would have an element of you being like, I wouldn't want that. Like, I'd be worried that she's going to do this or other guys are going to. No, I don't want that stress. I want a woman who's classy, elegant, and main thing more than anything is inaccessible to other men. And one of the problems that I think is happening in younger men and men in general is they're prioritizing lust over loyalty when it comes to what makes a high value woman. Who they lust after is more important than who will be loyal to them. But if you want a successful relationship, it's far more important to pick a woman who's loyal to you, because you will not succeed in life with disloyal women, ever. Women can still succeed in life with disloyal men. I know that's an uncomfortable truth, but it's been happening for centuries. You can get a great life if you want to. If you turn the other eye, it happens. There's women that sign up to be mistresses because of that. There's women that do that because they're like, I'll have a great life, he won't stress me out, and he'll be gone. Yeah, he'll be gone most of the time. You cannot have a successful life with a disloyal woman. You just can't, because women lose empathy for men that they're not madly in love with. So when it comes to courts, when it comes to children, when it comes to taking alimony, she dehumanizes you the moment she doesn't love you anymore. And so you cannot run that risk. Whereas men, even if they don't love you, they can still say, oh, she's a girl, she's crying, oh, I feel bad, okay, fine, take my money. Women are like, I don't love you anymore. I don't care if you're sleeping in your car. I'm taking that house. You don't win in life.
Do the French have something figured out that the rest of us just don't? In that I've heard so many stories of French relationships, marriages, that the husband or probably both partners are allowed to have a little young girl.
I've said that before. I did get DM'd by a French man
Tell
once
me.
who was offended that I was perpetuating that offensive stereotype about the French.
Can you fill me in on this? I don't know this stereotype.
The French all have mistresses, basically.
And the women?
Sometimes they do, yeah.
Okay.
It's just more of a relaxed attitude towards... like it's more of a something monogamy.
It's not like it doesn't ever become the main relationship. It just is this little side thing that happens.
Well, look, I come from I come from a Muslim culture, but there's men that have 2 wives. So I do
just 2?
Yeah, up to 4, but 2 wives
those
usually.
Are rookie numbers.
But what I would say is that women, they are not actually sexually jealous. They just don't like being caught off guard. They don't like the shock. There's women
they don't want to be embarrassed.
They don't want to be embarrassed. There's women that are mistresses that know every night that your wife might even be pregnant in the time that she's with you. They know that you sleep with your wife, but they don't mind because there's an element of control. She knows what's going on. It's the moment they don't know that they get possessive and they get really, really heartbroken. So sometimes the knowledge reduces the heartbreak and the pain. So in cultures like France, or maybe where there's 2nd or 3rd wives, there's a lack of reaction to the affair because knowledge is powerful for them.
Yeah, I think that it's different in other cultures. I think that the argument I make in my book is that in many cases, monogamy in the West is sort of a transfigured monotheism, a kind of a Christianity. And we don't see the kind of really rabid defense of monogamy in cultures that have never historically been touched by Christian conquerors. You don't see this in sub-Saharan Africa. You don't see this in the Far East. In the Far East in particular, they have a more Confucian attitude, which is interpersonal harmony, which is that men are going to have wives and men are going to have mistresses. Let's just accept that fact and let's find ways for everyone to kind of get along. And it's more about like figuring out the rights and privileges and responsibilities of each to every that prioritizes, that kind of like dominates that culture versus this kind of strict overregulation of like this, and this. Everybody has to stay in their compartments. Everyone has to stay in their lanes. Yeah. Which doesn't seem to work.
And especially if you don't have a religious compass behind it, it's like, why are you restricting yourself so much? Like, I can understand why they just think, why am I doing this? Whereas if you've got
because it's been forgotten as religion. Like certainly there are religious people who have a morality about that, but it's just like a culture. People feel vaguely guilty even if they're not a practicing Christian or practicing any kind of religion with respect to the righteousness of monogamy. They just know that it's not what they're supposed to do. And I think that they don't even really understand why they feel guilty. I think it's social programming.
Do you think we could ever get to a stage where men accept the women are more unfaithful and they're just kind of... Because I saw an episode of yours... I saw an episode of yours, Mark, where there's a man that was a cuckold and with his wife. And
to me that was so foreign. Like I can't imagine...
Well, it's not foreign to me because one of the things
But there are guys that are into it.
But I would imagine, one thing I always say is the men that, I know it sounds terrible, the men that are not confident in their sexual experience accept a woman being unfaithful. They have far more leeway because either they're not confident in the size of their penis or their performance. They almost understand why she's doing it. Men that are sexually confident won't tolerate it. They don't place sexual satisfaction in the hands of one particular woman. So if she's not behaving, she's not respecting him, she's not doing what she should be doing, bye, no problem. But men that lack sexual confidence, she can do anything. Absolutely anything, but they would prefer to just stick with her than the potential embarrassment of performing with another woman. So I do always say that a lot of men's confidence when it comes to women stems from their sexual confidence. And I think I said it in one of our previous interviews. It's one of the reasons why you'll see these guys that have got, no particular job. They're not doing that great, but they will literally have all this sexual confidence in the world. They'll go up to a girl and be like, "You're so fine," and they've got all this sexual confidence in the world. And it really does boil down to what they think they'll be able to do if they got a chance to perform with her. If they're confident in that area, easy, talking to her is easy. If they're nervous in that area, talking to her gives them anxiety. So you almost have to fix your sexual performance to fix your ability to talk to women. It's backwards for men. But I could be wrong.
Interesting.
But I'm never wrong.
The overarching thing that kind of covers everything we've spoken about is how self-esteem and self-respect play such an important role in all of these kind of relationships.
Yeah.
I think that the ability to attract and seduce women successfully is very inseparable from a man's sense of self-esteem. Like if a man has everything else going for him, maybe he's very competent, he's professionally successful, he's got great friends, he has a beautiful house, but he, for whatever reason, despairs of ever being able to talk to a woman, to seduce her, to move that relationship in the direction of a sexual encounter, I don't think he's going to feel very good in his heart of hearts.
Yeah, because that's their driving motivator behind those other things. Having a good body, having money, is their driving motivator. So if you can't access women from it, all of it feels in vain. Whereas if it leads to women, it all feels like it's worth it.
That's right. It's all sublimated sexual desire. It's like, why do men work so hard in so many other ways?
Yeah.
It's a means of attracting women. Though that is what I call an attraction proxies. There's so many guys, I think you've spoken about this, Sadia, who just think, well, I'm going to work really hard in making $1 million, and then once I have $1 million, I just have to show a woman my bank account and she's going to fall head over heels in love with me. And this is a very rudimentary understanding of female psychology.
I would say more than your money, more than anything else, work on your sexual performance. It will change everything.
Well, we need practice, Sadia.
Yeah, but practice is not porn. Yeah, this is what I've noticed.
That's true.
Yeah, this is what the problem. I'm seeing young men around in their early 20s. And Mark, you'll probably understand this because you didn't grow up in an area of like where porn was so saturated. These men in their early 20s are using Viagra. Now, my partner bumped into some really young men, and he was telling me like they're 28 years old and using Viagra. Can you believe that? And I said, that doesn't make any sense. And he's like, there must be something in the water. And I was like, no, there must be something in what they're watching. They're watching too much too early. They can no longer perform. So they then start using Viagra, become dependent on Viagra. And as a result, they simply don't have confidence when it comes to women, but they do have confidence when it comes to paying for sex because they still want that experience. So it's what they've done to their body, unfortunately, by saturating and hijacking their brain with pornography that is really worrying for young men. I can't believe young men take Viagra. I thought a 22-year-old, when I was a teacher, this is about 10 years ago, I used to teach in high schools, and this is about only 10 years ago, and they would get nervous when a female teacher walks past them because they're scared that something might go up or whatever, and they'd be nervous all the time, and they'd be like this all the time. In this day and age, I meet 19-year-old boys that will say, I don't know what the problem is, but I can't seem to, my girlfriend says that nothing comes up or anything like that. It's oversaturation.
I think it could be from porn. I've certainly seen some men like that. That's an extreme thing. They're watching porn like 8 hours a day sometimes, day after day after day after day. I think there are other possible explanations for why even young men might have performance anxiety with women. I think that there is a lot of pressure on guys that it's like, I have to make this woman come 20 times. She needs to squirt.
But
she needs to have
where
the
are they
most.
getting that pressure from outside of porn? We are not saying that.
I felt that pressure when I was a young man, and I didn't grow up with porn.
Did girls say it to you, or where did you get this pressure from?
You didn't get it from
I don't
women.
think a girl has ever said that.
No, girls
would
never
never
talk
say
to me in that way.
So
You heard it from other guys. And it's
bragging
like,
about things that didn't happen.
potentially.
Yeah.
But also this idea of like, I actually think it's potentially from a good place. It's like, I want to be the best lover that this woman has. And so I am going to be Herculean in my efforts in the bedroom.
That's your insecurity, though.
But that's
Sure,
it's counterintuitive because what ends up happening is that pressure that you apply on yourself will make it difficult for you to perform, and you automatically become the least attractive man to her in that area.
And it's difficult for you to get aroused because you have all this pressure on yourself to be the best that she's ever had.
Yeah.
Sometimes I actually counsel these men to be more selfish. Like, who cares whether she enjoys herself or not? Like, focus on her. Like, smell her hair and feel her body. It's like, get out of yourself. Like, don't worry about how you're doing.
How women will define good intimacy is just entirely how you make her feel. The more you make her feel beautiful, amazing, gorgeous, like she's the best ever, she'll say you're the best. But the moment you don't do that and you get robotic or you get anxious or you can't perform, she'll feel ugly. So the key is just how you make her feel rather than what you're actually doing. So just make her feel like she's a superstar.
That's very different, because I think a lot of guys are just, I have to make her come.
You just have to make her feel like she's Beyonce.
There you go.
How do you make a woman feel like she's Beyonce?
You react to her beauty.
I in my relationships that I've always had great luck in, my number one job is to make my partner, and I do this with my kids, I do it with my friends, I do it with romantic.
You do it with me.
I do it with you.
Yeah,
I
you're
do it
so
with
kind
you.
to me.
I make sure your self-esteem is increasing every time you see me.
Every time I come on here, before I come on, Mark will make sure that like he lets me know how great I am.
Yeah,
or
and
anything
I kind of
like
do it with pretty much everybody I interview. And I get criticized for it because I'm hitting on every woman that comes through here that sits in that stool. But what I'm actually doing is trying to make them feel good about themselves, so they're not, some people have anxiety about being on camera, so like, I don't want to be, I'm ugly or whatever. And I'm like, no, you look beautiful. Your hair looks great. I love your dress. Which I do. I mean, you look fantastic.
But then
Sadia.
automatically, what does it do? It helps her leave feeling great.
Yeah.
Nothing's actually happened. You didn't do anything.
No, I'm not sleeping with anybody.
You can leave a woman better than you found her. And I think that I've taught men is an important thing to keep in mind to get over approach anxiety in particular. It's like, if you approach with the attitude, it's like, I'm just going to make a connection with another human being, and regardless of whether she gives me her number, regardless of whether she has a boyfriend, regardless if this leads to anything, it's like, I can have a moment of connection and leave her better than I found her.
That's it.
And if I approach that attitude, what do I have to fear from a woman?
You got to take away the narcissism that you might have, that you have to be the best and you have to impress her, and replace it with, I have to make her feel. And this is really the true core of charisma. It's not you being the most exciting person in the room. It's about you having the ability to make others feel really good about themselves. And that, if you carry that into your sexual performance, you will put less pressure on yourself, and you'll, by design, be better.
I think it can work both ways. Like, you can be the most interesting person in the room and get laid. But you can also, if you can't be the most interesting person in the room, you can make other people feel like they're the most interesting people in the room.
Yeah.
You get a hell of a lot more phone numbers being nice to people.
Yeah, you get, and just genuinely taking an interest in that other person. It's not as difficult as men like to think it is. And I think they've overcomplicated it by over-consuming content, teaching them about it, when they're forgetting to read her own body and her own signals. And what you really need to realize is the moment you give her reactions to her beauty, you make her feel like she's beautiful, she gets more comfortable anyway. She will come alive anyway. So
maybe I might have to disagree with you.
I don't know what it's like to sleep with a woman, by the way. So I don't know what it's like, but you must be able to teach me.
I think that leading with physical compliments, especially with a beautiful woman, doesn't get you very far in pickup.
But I think not with
depends
pickup,
who it's coming
but with
from.
intimacy. Not with pickup.
So you've already successfully seduced this woman, and you're in a relationship with her? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, sorry,
sure,
in bed. Outside of the bedroom, she gets compliments all day, every day. We're in that vulnerable position, she actually doesn't know where she stands. She actually doesn't know. So you're almost starting from scratch. And the more you can, make her feel comfortable, the better it'll be. You don't need to over-worry.
You should definitely try to treat your partner better over time, for sure.
But over-complimenting a beautiful woman is useless. Yeah, it doesn't work at all. If actually, it makes you very boring as a man. Over-complimenting.
No, there's a time and a place for every comment. Yes, those are good points. Who do you think is more naive, men or women?
By far, men. What would you say?
Probably men. Yeah, but I heard you talk about this on your last interview with Mark, and you talked about how deluded men were when they believe that the 22-year-old has actually fallen in love with them and not their 70-year-old money, et cetera, et cetera. And that certainly can be the case.
Yeah.
I think that men are more romantic than women in general, but I do think that women can be naive as well.
They can be, but the thing is they'll be surrounded by friends that will kind of teach them the truth. They'll be surrounded by content creators that teach them the truth. They'll be surrounded with...
What content creators are teaching women
the
truth?
Well, only the ones that will say men are trash and men are this, so the negative kind of ones.
But men aren't all trash.
I know.
So that's not the truth.
That's also not the truth, I understand. But they kind of...
That's just making women feel right in that moment. And they go to that content creator because they've been hurt by a man, and it's easier for them to collectively denigrate the man's failings than to potentially look at why did this outcome happen? Like, what part of this are you responsible for?
But even little things, like I find that women, like for example, if a man starts following a new girl online, most women will be alert to that. They'll be like, why are you following this? Who's this girl? Or you're liking this picture. Most women will be alert to that. Women will be following brand new men or posting provocatively, and the men almost don't feel like they can say anything, or they don't even think anything of it. So our mind goes to, look, I would always say that the hotter the girl, the less naive she is. Unattractive people, men and women, are naive. And I think that's a better question. Rather than gender, I think unattractive people are naive, attractive people are not naive. And the reason being is attractive people get to see what human behavior is like when they're sexually attracted to you. So an attractive man will see that a woman will leave her husband and come to you in the middle of the night and say, okay, I'm going to be late, and she'll lie in your bed. An attractive woman will see that a man will post pictures of his wife as a WhatsApp picture and still be messaging her all day, every day, and begging her to spend time with him. The more attractive you are, the less naive you are, because you see what people act like when they want you. Unattractive people think, oh, I know she went to his house at 12 a.m., but she would never do that because she doesn't do that with you. She can sit next to you at 12 a.m. and nothing will happen.
Have you heard about that guy who's divorcing his wife after the Drake concert? Have you heard that?
Was it Usher concert?
Oh, it was Usher.
It was Usher,
yeah. Right. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Because apparently this woman wouldn't even hold hands with him in public. She was very, demure, and Usher invited this woman up on stage, and she's
fed her
licking
grapes.
cherries and staring at her with this unabashed desire, and the guy
she wouldn't hold her
She
husband's
wouldn't
hand.
hold her husband's hand. And that's the problem. The more attractive you are, the more you get privy into an insight into human behavior when they want you. The less attractive is that you think people talk on the phone all day, every day without it crossing lines. Or you think people hang out late at night and it doesn't cross any lines because no one crosses lines with you. But in the real world, attractive people cross lines.
Yeah, there's this old joke in Buddhism that's basically like, enlightenment, better not start. Having started, better finish.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes it's best to just, it's kind of like a bell curve. Let's say that you grew up in some small town, and then you go to like Cleveland, Ohio, and you're like, wow, it's Cleveland. There's so many things here. It's like, this is the place for me. And maybe it is, but maybe you shouldn't travel anywhere else. To actually understand how Cleveland exists in the scheme of things, you might have to travel to hundreds of cities and hundreds of countries, and then you see what Cleveland is good and bad for. So sometimes it's best for people to stop really early because they can be impressed by Cleveland. But if you don't do that, you might as well be a world traveler so you actually understand what the world is like. But it's the people who get trapped in the middle, and that's the vast majority of people, that are often dissatisfied.
And I don't actually think being non-naive is a virtue, like somebody who knows it quite well. The only good thing I find from knowing kind of the opposite sex quite well is that everything is predictable. I know that if you stop having intimacy with your husband, he's going to cheat. Unless he's got no testosterone, he's going to cheat. So you run the risks knowing what the outcomes are. So the good thing is you can make informed decisions, but it doesn't actually contribute to a much happier life in any way, shape or form. So maybe there's beauty in naivety. Maybe you'll get 10, 20, even beautiful kids with somebody that you didn't know what they were up to, and then the outcome is still you get beautiful kids and you get a good, long-lasting marriage for a couple of years.
We make such a big deal about the differences between men and women, but it's almost like what you just said, where the very attractive almost live in this stratosphere that's very, very different than the rest of us.
Yeah, different world. They pull out different reactions from people. They also don't understand, like one of the things that attractive women will say to unattractive women, be like, what? Don't settle for less. What are you talking about? If he didn't take you to a nice restaurant, that means he doesn't want you. And it's like, but then that's the most she can extract out of a man. Why would you put your beautiful standards on this average-looking woman? Or if it's like, don't settle, ladies, you're somebody else's dream girl. No, some women are nobody's dream girl. They're somebody's wife, but they're not any man's dream girl because they don't look like Pamela Anderson, they don't look like Megan Fox. So not every girl is somebody's dream girl.
It's just such a hard thing to sell to women because it's...
But it's the reality. Well, I'm majority of men's not their dream girl. It's not the end of the world with that. But it takes a self-esteem to understand. Look, here's the thing. People who have high self-esteem attached to truths. They enjoy truths. Truth means something to them. People with low self-esteem see truths as threats and they see it as an insult. You have to really have an unwavering desire to be close to the truth because it's the only way to stay sane.
We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I'll mention it with Sadia. It's like, I think that women want what other women want. And so they're constantly looking at other women for cues as to what is the right way to be. And especially through the lens of social media, so many women are looking out at the highlight reels of their life, and they're seeing women do everything. And so women want everything, not in a material sense, but in an emotional, relational, experiential sense. They want to have all of the experiences. They want to do all the things and have all the feels. And so if they see a woman over there, or multiple women in their highlight reels, having a kind of relationship that they've never felt, I think they get this sense of FOMO. They don't think, well, it's just because she's hot and I'm not, and I should just make peace with that. Like, I think that's going to be a very tough sell for the vast majority of women. They think, well, why not me? I want that too.
I think you can have that experience as long as you within your lane. You pick your level, you can have a wonderful relationship.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, you can honestly have a beautiful relationship.
But you might not have Michelin star dinners, you might not fly Emirates first class, you might, etc.
But I saw this singer on TikTok, and he's going viral, he's doing really well, and he said that when I first met my wife now, I was living in my car, she came and stayed with me in my car, and so on and so forth. And they are perfect. Yeah, now he's super successful. I forget his name, but he's fantastic. And they are perfectly matched in terms of looks. Perfectly matched. She's not some blonde like bombshell. He's not some Brad Pitt. They're just perfectly matched. And in psychology, we have a concept of the matching hypothesis. The most long-lasting, fulfilling relationships are where two people are matched on their level of attractiveness. The problem is unattractive people don't want to accept their match. They'll say things like, the guys I like are just married or gone, or the ones that like me, I don't like them. Well, that's your level. If that's what's coming to you, that is your level.
Well, that's the entitlement that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And I think for men look at so much porn and they can pick out whoever their partner is. So these guys get used to having sexual stimulation from women that are so far out of their league.
You won't believe it. Like, I'll get guys in the middle of India being like, I'm madly in love with this blonde Russian woman and I know she wants me. I'm like, I'm so sorry, Sanjay, but it's very unlikely that this Tatiana is in love with you. Like, accept it. But they're like, I don't like Indian women. I'm like, but I'm so sorry. I'm a Pakistani woman. I know my appeal is limited. I don't have the same appeal as a Brazilian woman, and I never will. It's okay because I stick to who likes me. There'll always be somebody. But when you want the same appeal as people who you are not on the same level as, you'll always be set up for disappointment.
Well, I think what we're talking about, I call it the difference between hunting and fishing. Hunting is where you target one specific person. I want that man, I want that woman. And in general, it's only really attractive people who can do that with a high sense of success, a high rate of success. And I do think in general, women can hunt more successfully than men can, because even less attractive women, if they're going to be direct, can at least...
They get somewhere.
They can at least spin up a sexual relationship with a man. Men, I think the better strategy is to fish, in the sense, cast a wide net and haul in a catch. And among those that are interested in you, choose the best looking, most interesting morsels.
Yeah.
Like, start with what wants you.
Yeah.
And then choose the one that works. And that's a recipe for a really stable, satisfying relationship.
And I know it's harder the less attractive you are, but you're expecting people to limit what they're attracted to by selecting you, but you're not prepared to do that. So you just have to get so real with yourself in terms of your attractiveness, and there's nothing wrong with it. The realer you get, the easier it gets, because then you know what your market is, and you can select, and you can have a beautiful relationship.
And I also think that everyone can be more attractive than they currently are. Like,
especially
there's always
women.
Something that you can do.
Yeah, women with the surgeries that are going out, I'm not suggesting that you should do that, but with the makeup even, and how you can present yourself, and fast fashion makes everything like, this is cheap. Like, even this dress is cheap. You can get so much access to beauty more than ever before. And I think men as well. I think the only thing is that men suffer with is if they're significantly shorter than the average woman, then they suffer a little bit. And I don't always know what to tell them.
Isn't that interesting? It's like never been easier in the history of the world for a woman to be feminine, and yet we don't see that. Like, imagine the Wild West in the 19th century, how difficult it was. They didn't have indoor plumbing, like, just to stay basic hygiene, and they had these fancy dresses that they had to wash on the washboard, and cosmetics that had to come in on the stagecoach, and yet that was our template for femininity for that century. Now it's like you can get it delivered to your door for dollars, and it's never been easier to at least make that presentation, and maybe for some, that's exactly why it's no longer valuable anymore. Do you think that might be the case? Like it's too easy to be feminine, and so that's not worth it
I don't know why
anymore?
you wouldn't want to do it, but I guess it's just maybe how you've been raised. I think for some people, they always
Not
feel
dressing for the male gaze.
not dressing for the male gaze, seeing it as a negative thing to dress up for, for men.
A lot of women do not necessarily dress for men. They're dressing for other women.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, they are, but
it's
there's
not,
nothing wrong.
It's wrong to say that it's entirely for
Yeah,
women.
and also there's nothing wrong for dressing for men. You're a straight woman. Why wouldn't you want to dress for men? Well, like, what's wrong with doing that? I get that it's kind of a common thing. Like, we don't dress for men, we don't dress for men, we don't dress for men. But even if you did, is that the end of the world? You're single, you're trying to meet a man. What's wrong with that?
Men.
What's wrong with if you wanted to?
You don't see that in any other domain. Can you imagine, like, if you were trying to find a job, being like, well, I don't care what the employer is looking for.
I'm not getting my qualifications for my job, then what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
So
right.
it's a strange...
What do you guys think of Ozempic and testosterone?
You can start with that.
I actually equate Ozempic to the equivalent of like escorts, essentially.
Really?
Yeah, I
How
do.
so?
Just how we've been saturated by food in this culture, and it's so easy to eat, and it's become. We've now got Ozempic now, where you can eat as much as you want. You don't even have to learn the skills of being a healthy dieter. You don't have to learn how to work on yourself. You don't have to learn how to work out. You've got this magic pill, and you get access to the body that you've always wanted. I equate the same thing as escorts. Now you're saturated with sexuality and porn, and now you don't need to work on yourself. You don't need to worry about your insides. You've got access to exactly what you wanted. So I think, I don't want to judge, because at the end of the day, I don't know what it's like to be super overweight. And sometimes I have to be honest. I have said to our clients, do it. Do Ozempic if you want to do it. If you need to get your foot in the door, just absolutely do it. But the process of what you need to maintain a good body is really, really important. So I do recommend, if you're really overweight and you just can't get the weight off and it's really stopping your self-esteem, do the Mounjaro or Ozempic. But what I do notice is the more overweight a person is, the more afraid they are of Ozempic. They're like, oh, no, I don't want to mess up my insides. I'm like, but you messed up your outsides. Well, now what are you worried about? So I sometimes recommend it just to get them started, because sometimes willpower isn't enough. What was the other thing you mentioned? Ozempic
Testosterone.
Testosterone for men. It's like testosterone is the male equivalent of Ozempic for women.
I really worry for low testosterone men. I really, really worry for them, because women will only respond to testosterone, but so do other men. So without that, you really do suffer. I get that it's useful having those testosterone injections, but nothing is more useful and as a man than just being a man. Like, just be a man. And I know it's easier said than done, because the
what does
water...
that mean? Like, just saying to be a man is not something that we might know how to do anymore.
That's what I think is the real problem. I thought being a man was a given. You know what being a man is. Unfortunately, it's been hijacked and they have no clue what being a man is. And I think maybe when
They've been taught by women for generations on how to be a man.
Yeah. So I think culturally they don't actually know what being a man is, and they think being a man is just being softer, kinder, more caring, rather than just being more essentially providing, protecting, and procreating.
Because all of the traits and characteristics of traditional masculinity have been deemed as toxic and morally reprehensible when they're presented in men for the last couple of decades.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stoicism, that strength, that confidence, that will to power, that success, achievement. Like, that's great when it's in a woman. And it's like, you go, girl, boss bitch, queen. It's like, but when a man embraces those same qualities, it's scary.
But I blame men for them in that as well, because sometimes I meet men that hate their fathers, and I'm like, why did you hate your father so much? And it's like, oh, because he was not very emotionally available, and he didn't spend enough time with us, and he just used to work all the time. And so the qualities that make a man of a father, they resent them for. It's almost like they wanted two women to raise them. They wanted lesbian parenting. They wanted their mum and dad to act exactly the same. My mum used to hug me and kiss me. And
sometimes moms put a little bug in kids' ears. It's like, your dad thinks his job is more important than his family, and kids don't have the critical capacity to really examine that until much later.
And then they become on the receiving end when their kids are alienated against them. Then they start to realize what it was like. So this kind of anger towards masculinity is even in young boys. They're angry at their dad for kind of pushing them and telling them, look, right, you're going to fail if you don't work harder, or stop your stupid YouTube channel, go get a real job. I know it sounds negative, but a man's job is to be practical and be aggressive and be harsh on you so that you raise your own personal standards. Men seem to resent masculinity in other men these days.
We talk about that. It's like, it's the reason why those high T alpha characteristics of traditional masculinity are threatening, is because you can't compete successfully. Low status men can't beat those men. Women can't beat those men in head-to-head competition. And women have entered into male-dominated spaces, and they're not going anywhere. They want to win. They want the work. They want the money. They want the fame. They want the attention. They want the status. They don't want to just be behind a good man and support him from the shadows and keeping a nice home for him while the kids are playing in the yard. Like those days are gone, for better or for worse.
And I don't want them to misinterpret and think masculinity means being mean and harsh and stuff. It just means having that.
Sometimes it means that.
Sometimes it means that, but you combine it with warmth when you see good behavior.
Yeah.
It's simply just, if you're just too harsh and too like masculine, you become avoidant and negative, and you can't build a relationship with that. It's more of a case of punish the bad and really reward the good. That's all. That's all it really kind of boils down to. But what men do is punish, like just essentially just reward good and bad. They just stay too consistent with a woman. And you've got to really, really have a punishment for the bad and a reward for the good. And punishment for a woman doesn't mean aggression. It just means withdrawal. Withdrawal of if it's perks, if she's spending too much, it's like putting a limit on it. Or if she's going out too much, it's putting a limit on it. Or if she's disrespecting you too much, you start to think, I don't want to be here. You might withdraw yourself. So withdrawal rather than actively punishing.
What do you guys think of, Orion's gotten in some hot water on our first video where you talked about leading with sex.
Do you mind refreshing that? And I'll say, yeah.
Well, sure. I've since crafted my language a little bit differently.
No, go full throttle. You're in good hands.
Well, I think it's actually better what I've
Okay.
adapted since then. So what I talk about is, for better or for worse, we live in a society in which sex precedes commitment. That's just the reality of the situation. So I think that, especially in an age where women can get in touch with almost every other man on the planet through social media, like they can hunt, they can target specific men, that the way to access certain men, especially otherwise inaccessible, high status, desirable men, is to offer a really compelling sexual opportunity. The richest, creamiest milk that you could possibly offer. That's my new language. Because this is sort of like the Trojan horse. It's if you offer a compelling, no strings attached, beautiful, interesting, fun sexual experience, it's going to be very hard for most men to say no to that. And they're going to open the door because it seems like it's a gift. There's no strings attached at all. You don't lead with commitment. You don't knock on the door and be like, hey, I was wondering if you could invite me in and make me your queen. It's like, you're not going to get anywhere that way. So you have to lead with something that the other person wants. That what makes them open their doors and they bring the Trojan horse in. Now, if you stop there and you are just an interesting...
Too many analogies. I liked your original version.
Interesting and compelling sexual encounter. If that's all you are, you might just get kicked out of the city in the morning. So you need to then find a way to stay. And that, in my experience, is finding a way to intricate yourself into the economy of that man's life. Like, find ways that you can be useful and valuable and slowly take on more and more of those responsibilities to the point where he kind of can't dispense with you anymore. Like, it would be painful or inconvenient to get rid of you because you do so much. You actually add value to his life. But if you lead with that, the doors stay closed, and if you don't move on to the second phase, you generally get evicted in the morning. So it's a two-pronged, two-phased siege, as it were.
And I understand, and I actually agree, because one thing I would say is when you work with the most successful men in the world, you'll find that their only criteria in women becomes their sexual promiscuity. How much?
They have everything else.
They have everything else. So the reason why I think it's slightly dangerous, though, from a man's perspective, to be that guy that just falls for great sex is, firstly, what happens when you meet a woman who gives you the best sexual experience of your life, what ends up happening is you stop your vetting process. You don't want to vet and understand her better. So you won't even ask, how come she's so great at sex and she's like 20 years younger than me? Or how come she has all these nudes on her phone already? Like, when was this? Where were you? Who were you sending this to? They don't care. They all see a video that's clearly before them and just want it. They all see that, you know, she's doing all these moves and wearing all these outfits, and they're not even thinking, how does she know all of this? They're just thinking, this is the best experience ever. Now, she's coming into this with more experience than you. Never, ever, ever a good sign, especially if a woman is more sexually aware than you. Never a good sign. Secondly, if you are successful, you don't need her to add value. You only need her to be good at sex. So the more successful you are and you lead with that, the more you have to risk, because essentially she will do nothing after that. After that, she will have no value to add to you because you outsource everything. So then what will happen is you've got this hyper promiscuous woman that you haven't vetted, who is doing the one and only job that you can't outsource. You are now madly in love, and she is now thinking, I've managed to get access to all this wealth and luxury and all this lifestyle because I knew how to suck a dick. This is the best and easiest job I've ever had. She's not going to stop there.
You said it, not me.
Yeah, so she's not going to stop. So you are now left with a hyper promiscuous woman with zero value added to your life, who is in the habit of doing this, and you have a lot to risk and lose. So I think as a man, when you need lust. Yeah, there is no way a man can fall in love with a woman without lusting after her first. They need a fantastic, amazing sexual experience. They need lust. They need it to be the best that they can have ever accessed if they want to be sexually loyal to that woman. But the better way to do it is look at how her prior sexual experience. If it's not what you like, it's better to take a woman with all the great qualities that you need in a woman and teach her what you like and make her into the best sex than taking the best sex and trying to make her into a wife. It's better to take a wife and turn her into a whore than take a whore and turn her into a wife.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Sadia.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that, this strategy is not for men. It's for women.
Yes,
I'm
it's a
teaching
great
women
strategy.
how to get these sorts of men.
Absolutely.
And who gets pissed off when I say this?
The women.
The women.
Yeah.
The guy should be like, what the fuck, man? You're giving away our secrets.
And I've said it to many girls. I was like, if I want to teach a woman how to get the most successful man in the world, all you have to do is be amazing sexually. They will look for nothing else. Nothing else. You don't have to cook. You don't have to clean. You don't even have to be loyal. They won't even know because they're always
You won't even know
away.
there are other women on the planet.
They won't even know. So if this advice is for women, absolutely. And you'll see a lot of women that are training other women how to use women, they focus on this. And this is why I would say Eastern European and Russian women have such a monopoly over successful men, is because they know from day one, all you have to do is please a man sexually. You don't have to acknowledge his existence after that. And that's how they treat men. They're literally like, okay, are you useful? Yes. Okay, I'll sleep with you and it'll be the best you'll ever have. After that, don't expect anything else from me. Like, leave me alone, essentially, after that. And they have men on a chokehold with that attitude. Whereas you'll meet, let's say, Indian, Pakistani women who will cook, clean, know everything. But if they don't know how to, they won't be sexually loyal to that woman. So to get that strategy for a woman is a fantastic strategy. For a man, because I always think about things from the perspective of children, I know what happens when you get the wrong woman pregnant. Children suffer. And that's why I always train men to be more selective than I do women. Because women, if you choose a bad man, you'll have a beautiful kid. Hopefully you'll treat them well. If you choose a bad woman, you suffer. The children suffer.
So back to therapy again. Do you find therapy is actually helpful for your clients?
No, unless you're coming to me. I really would go as far as saying, unless you're coming to me, fire your therapist. And the reason I say that is I will have clients that come to me and say, I've been in therapy 8 years. I'm like, fire your therapist. Why on earth have you been in therapy for more than 3 months? And 6 months at most, you should see a significant change. And if you don't see a significant, it doesn't mean like your whole life has to change. It's at least you know what you're doing wrong. And then you can make the decision to stay or leave in that relationship. But if you've been doing it for 8 years, 10 years, and you've gone through terrible relationships in that time, all of these things, then essentially your therapist hasn't understood what the problem is and hasn't told you the problem, and you are just paying her to be your friend. You need a therapist that firstly understands modern dating, really, really understands the modern dynamics of what's going on. So she's not going to just sit there and give you a bunch of love languages and attachment styles. She's going to tell you, look, I think that if she's going Miami on weekends with her friends, chances are she's not really ready for a commitment. But what traditional therapists will say is maybe she's an avoidant. She just needs a bit of space. They overcomplicate what are essentially facts. And so I don't think therapists actually understand that what's the crux of modern dating. So they can't help you in the correct way. And essentially people just use it to make themselves feel better, but it doesn't actually make them a better person. And how you can measure whether you've got a good therapist or not is the quality of your relationships. If you are still in toxic relationships, there's still toxicity, it's still bad. Just because you feel better doesn't mean the therapy is working. The quality of your relationships is a measurement of how great the therapist is going. Even if you're single, do your relationships get better? If they don't, then your therapist is not as helpful as you think.
I think therapy can be helpful, but on the whole, it is very limited in what it can accomplish. And I think we think that it's a panacea for all kinds of individual and social problems. I do think that therapy tends to lead with communication and understanding, that all
compassion.
problems and compassion, yeah, I could see that. That all relationship problems can be solved if we just learn to communicate better, to understand each other, and have more empathy for each other's perspectives. And that's bullshit. That's not true. Like, why don't we teach that to our world leaders? Like, is that what's going on between international relations? Is there just not enough communication? There's not enough compassion? It's like, that's not what actually leads to improved relations between countries. It's not actually what leads to improved relations between individuals. I do think that it's okay to work with a therapist long term, provided that the problem that you initially came to see him or her has been resolved a long time ago. And you can kind of become like a sounding board or a confidant as opposed to a paid friend. Maybe they're similar, I'm just being semantic. And I've had some long-term relationships with that. The way I described my practice was it was therapeutic coaching. The idea here is let's define the problem, let's have actionable solutions. The progress is going to be made outside the sessions when you start to make different choices and act differently. And you shouldn't have to give this 3 months as a trial period. You should know that this is helping you from the very first session.
Yeah, very first.
And you should be moving in the direction of your objectives. And if not, there's an issue. And I think a big reason why some therapists aren't so solution-focused in this way is, one, there's this unwritten law in therapy that you're not ever, ever, ever supposed to be directive with your clients. Like the insight for action should always arise spontaneously within the client, and I think that's stupid.
That's not true.
And I think that if someone is doing something foolish or harmful or detrimental to their goals, it's my job to give my perspective on what they could do differently to avoid that.
Yeah, and I think that if your therapist leads with kindness, which is very nice, but that's what your friends are for. You're paying somebody to lead with truth.
That's what my friends are for. My friends aren't that kind.
And you're paying them. So sometimes they'll come to me in a session and they'll say to me, I got more in one session than like months of my therapist. And I said, because they weren't being truthful with you. And it's because you weren't truthful with them and they believed you. The better thing to do is that you get really aligned with the truth and you decide, look, because I personally, and I think you do as well, we do group calls as well, and that really helps. For a lot of people, just having a community, having videos along with weekly calls, that really helps them. They get that community as well. And others prefer individual. But I would just say that first, the better thing to do when it comes to therapy is to be totally honest. And if you're coming because of your partner, and the partner refuses to come to therapy, your goal in therapy is just to realize whether or not you can accept them or let them go. But changing them is not going to happen, particularly if they're not on the call.
We were talking about this earlier before the recording. Another kind of dirty secret is that a lot of therapists are just terrible business people.
Myself included as well. To be fair, I'm not the best.
It's like, and there's kind of a conflict of interest in therapy. If the client actually gets better or solves their problem, they lose their income, their revenue. That's their livelihood. So I do think that sometimes there can be kind of a folie à deux between the client and the therapist to kind of keep things going in a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Yeah, that makes
So one
sense.
of the best ways for a therapist to actually help their clients and to tell them the truth is to have more work than they fucking know what to do with. It's like, I don't need any one client because I have a wait list of like 6 months. So let's solve your problem. It's okay if it only takes a session. It's okay if I never see you again. Please, it's not like there's an absence of people in the world who need help.
Yeah.
I really think both of you guys provide so much interesting and helpful, really like advice that you can't get from any normal therapist that you'd hire.
Yeah, and sometimes
on
people
YouTube.
try and shame us and be like, oh, you charge so much for a session, or oh my God, you only work with the 1%. We give so much advice for free.
For free.
We do so much of our job for free that you can access all day, every day, whenever you want, and not pay a penny.
If you guys were around doing these kind of videos when I was in my 20s, oh my God, my life would have been so different.
I can't believe how much I give for free. And yet they'll still say, can you give me a discount, or can we do this? And it's like, that's such an ingratitude. You don't do your job for me for free. I don't go to lawyers and expect them to do it for free. I give you a lot for free. And then you try and shame people who actually try and monetize the skill that you guys have been watching and revising and writing notes from all day, every day.
Sadia, did you always have this kind of insight and information in your mind?
I'm Muslim, and I think that's a big part of it. I think before I realized...
This is just common knowledge where you come from, all this stuff? Really?
Yeah, I
we
think
thought you were
so.
special.
No, honestly, I think being Muslim is a really big part of it. And this is one of the reasons why I was telling the boys that I tend to get a big backlash from like non-Muslim women particularly. And they're just like, this is so backwards, and blah, blah. I know it sounds archaic. It sounds totally archaic when a man tells you, take that picture of you on a thong down. down from Instagram. It sounds totally archaic when a man says, okay, you're out at 4 a.m. and your ex-boyfriend is there, come home. I know it sounds archaic, but deep down, you respect men that have these archaic values. You respect that more than the man that says, actually, you know what, yeah, go sleep with that guy while I watch, or yeah, you know what, I don't mind you going to do whatever you want, I don't mind, do whatever you want. You feel loved more with these archaic values than you will with, and you respect men more when you have these archaic values. So I think the Muslim element works, and then having the psychological research all just seems to back it. I think I remember when I was like 16 years old, reading something from Buss, the evolutionary psychologist who kind of did all this research, and he found that women like protectors, men like this, and all the evolutionary stuff. And I was like, oh, men like to spread their seed, and they have like multiple wives or whatever. And I was like, yeah, but that's, of course, why do you need research for that? That's that's what Muslims do. And they like to be protective, and there's protective jealousy, and you should there's jealousy is not. And he said in an interview, he said, as an American, I was always told that being jealous is an inside of insecurity. You should never be jealous. It's a way to put women off. But his research showed that women actually like protective jealousy. They like for you to make sure that you don't give the other men access to her. That's your way of staying alpha. And I was like, well, duh, isn't that true? But I didn't realize that this wasn't commonplace until I went online.
Well, I like to not have to do that.
Yeah.
Just to your point earlier that it's better to take a wife and turn her into a whore than a whore and turn her into a wife, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I just don't select a woman who's going out until 4 a.m. to the clubs.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point in getting into a power conflict? Just choose a woman who isn't interested in doing those
and I
things.
think that's the key difference between protective and insecure. Insecure men will choose really badly and almost beg her to change, but never walk away. Whereas protective men choose well. They might spot things that they don't like. They will tell her, and if she doesn't want to do it, no problem. They will just leave if they have to. So the willingness to walk away is what separates protectiveness from insecurity.
Very interesting. Both of you guys are fascinating. Great minds.
Thank you so much for having us.
This has been great, Mark. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
much
It's been a long time coming. We've been talking for like years. This has been great.
Thank you so much, Mark, for making it happen.
So much great advice. All right, you guys.
Take care.
Ciao.
Thanks. When I was designing the first Soft White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.